Hello, creepers. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and drop in the comments the worst place you can imagine during a zombie outbreak. Now let's get to it. I've been in some loud places in my life. Combat zones, military training exercises, the inside of a helicopter under fire. But nothing hit me in the chest like the roar inside Lusail Stadium that night. 88,000 people, flags waving, chants rolling like waves. The kind of energy that could make you forget the rest of the world even existed. I wasn't here for the sport, not really. My buddy Mike was. We served 2 tours together in Afghanistan, and now we were just 2 aging vets trying to enjoy something normal for once. He'd been talking about the World Cup Final for months, said we had to see it in person. I figured, why not? My knees hated me. My hearing wasn't what it used to be, and the beer was $10 a cup. But hell, after everything we'd been through, we'd earned it. The teams lined up on the field. The crowd hit another decibel level, and Mike elbowed me. "This is it, man," he grinned. "History." I smiled, but something was off. It had started before the game even began. Security was tighter than usual, even for an event like this. More than once I caught sight of staff in bright medical vests moving quickly through the lower levels. Not the usual slow stroll of stadium medics. This was brisk, purposeful. During the opening minutes, I noticed a commotion near one of the tunnel entrances. At first, I thought it was just an unruly fan. But the way security swarmed, the way a medic flinched back and dropped their kit, it didn't look like a drunk being hauled out. Mike didn't notice. He was too locked in on the field. The man could tune out artillery if there was a game on. I tried to shake it off. People trip, get sick, faint in heat like this. Nothing to dwell on. But the feeling kept creeping in. Something wasn't right. The air carried more than the smell of sweat and overpriced food. There was an edge to it, a tension. Half an hour in, the crowd's noise shifted for just a second. A ripple. Not cheers, not boos. Something else. I followed the sound to a section near the opposite corner flag. People were standing, looking down at the seats below them. Mike leaned in. "You seeing what's happening down there?" I nodded, eyes narrowed. 2 security guards were hauling a man away, but he wasn't walking. He was thrashing like a rabid animal, jerking so hard it took both of them to keep hold. I caught a flash of his face, jaw slack, eyes wide and unfocused, his skin pale under the floodlights. Then he snapped his head toward one of the guards, teeth bared. I looked away, forcing my attention back to the match. It wasn't my problem. Not yet. 5 minutes later, an announcement came over the PA. Nothing alarming. Just some generic, "please remain in your seats" spiel. But I'd been around enough bad situations to know. That's the kind of thing you say when you don't want people to panic. The unease dug in deeper. My instincts, the ones honed over years of staying alive, were whispering in my ear. When halftime came, I told Mike I was heading down to grab more drinks. Truth was, I wanted a better look at whatever was going on. The concourse was busy, but pockets of people were gathered, talking in low voices. I caught words here and there. Bitten, blood, wouldn't stop. I didn't like it, not one bit. At a corner near a staff door, 2 medics hurried past, pushing a stretcher. The sheet over it didn't hide the shape beneath, the shape of someone still moving. Mike found me before I made it to the concessions. "What's going on?" he asked. I forced a grin. "Probably nothing. Let's just enjoy the game." But even as I said it, my eyes kept flicking toward the tunnels. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew we weren't going to see the end of this match. By the time the second half kicked off, the stadium was electric again. Whatever was going on in the tunnels, it hadn't reached the crowd's full attention yet. Then it happened. Messi scored. The noise was unreal, a wall of sound that made my ribs vibrate. People around us were hugging, screaming, throwing arms in the air. Even Mike, who'd been a Messi fan since before I met him, was shouting himself hoarse. For a brief moment, the tension in my gut loosened. I let myself get pulled into it, clapping along, grinning despite myself. It felt like maybe the weirdness earlier had been nothing. But then, just as the crowd settled, I saw movement at the far end of the pitch. Not the players, not the ball. Security again, this time sprinting down one of the sidelines. A cluster of them vanished into the lower rows of seats. Mike noticed this time. Something's going on down there. The noise from the stands shifted again, a strange undercurrent beneath the cheers. A chant? No, a scream. I followed the sound to a pocket of chaos in the lower section. People were shoving past each other, spilling into the aisles. The TV cameras weren't showing it. They stayed locked on the players jogging back to the halfway line. But I could see enough from our angle. A man in a white jersey was on top of another spectator, both of them tangled between seats. At first I thought it was a fight. Then the man's head jerked up, his mouth wet and red. Mike swore under his breath. One of the stewards grabbed the man's arm, trying to drag him away. The guy twisted and bit down on the steward's forearm. Hard. The steward screamed, yanking free, blood running dark down his sleeve. Something in me shifted then. That old, sharp focus I hadn't felt since deployment. This wasn't a drunk. This wasn't normal. Over the PIA, the same calm voice from before came on. Please remain in your seats. We are handling a medical situation. The crowd didn't buy it. Not all of them, anyway. The section where the attack happened was already emptying out. People pushing into other rows. The ripple of movement spread outward, confusion building. I scanned for exits. The nearest was 2 sections over, but already a small stampede was forming there. Then I heard another scream. Closer. I turned just in time to see a man in a blue and white scarf shove a woman against the barrier. His teeth sank into her neck before I could even process it. Mike grabbed my arm. We're moving. Now. We pushed through the row, climbing over seats when people didn't move fast enough. Around us, the roar of the game was breaking apart, replaced by the sharp edge of panic. On the pitch, the players had noticed something was wrong. A few were pointing into the stands, their faces tight with confusion. Messi himself stood near the center circle, looking toward the chaos. Frozen for just a second before one of his teammates pulled him back. Security was trying to form a line along the field's edge, but I could already see the flaw. The infected weren't staying in one place. They were breaking through gaps, stumbling and sprinting in bursts, knocking people off their feet. We reached the top of our section and spilled into the concourse. It was worse here. The smell hit me first. Sweat, blood, something else. People were running in every direction, some clutching wounds, some screaming for loved ones. The stadium music still played over the speakers, like nothing was wrong. A surreal soundtrack to the chaos. Near one of the concession stands, 2 men were wrestling on the ground. One was limp, the other snarling like an animal, his hands clawing. Someone kicked him off, but he popped up fast, too fast, and lunged again. Mike shoved me toward the service corridor. We cut through here. We can get closer to the main exit without the crowd crushing us. I didn't argue. We slipped through the staff door, the noise of the concourse muffling behind us. The narrow hall smelled of disinfectant and frying oil from the kitchens. Halfway down, a figure stumbled into view. A cleaner in a stadium uniform. She was moving slow, head tilted at an unnatural angle, one arm dangling uselessly. Her eyes locked on us. "Ma'am," I started, but the word barely left my mouth before she lurched forward with a guttural growl. Mike didn't hesitate. He shoved her into the wall and kept moving. "Don't stop. Not for anyone." We came out near another exit tunnel, only to find the way blocked. A wall of people was pressed against the gates, screaming at the security outside to open them. On the other side, I could see shapes moving in the plaza, running, falling, tearing into each other. The infection wasn't just in the stadium, it was everywhere, and we were trapped in the middle of it. The gates weren't opening. No matter how hard the crowd pushed, no matter how loud they screamed, the heavy metal stayed locked. Someone in front of me pounded on the bars until his hands were slick with blood. Outside, shapes darted in and out of the plaza lights. People sprinting, people falling, people not getting back up. Then I saw one of them slam into the fence from the outside. A man in tattered clothes, face smeared with blood. His hands clawed through the bars, snapping fingers against the metal. When he couldn't reach, he backed up and threw himself at it again. The people pressed against the inside recoiled, but there was nowhere to go. That's when the screaming really started. Mike grabbed my shoulder. "We can't stay here. We'll get pinned in." He was right. A crush of people could kill you just as easily as whatever was out there. We turned back the way we came, pushing through the panicked flow. A man brushed against me, his eyes wide and glassy. His shirt was soaked dark at the collar. He stumbled on, not even noticing. We took another staff corridor, this one narrower and dimly lit. The air was cooler here, but heavy with that metallic tang of blood. My boots stuck for half a second on something wet. I didn't look down. A noise echoed from ahead, a sharp, wet, tearing sound followed by a grunt. I slowed, peering around the next corner. 2 stadium workers were on the floor, locked in a violent struggle. One was clearly losing, his throat already torn, blood pooling beneath his head. The other crouched over him, teeth tearing at the wound like an animal. Mike didn't wait. He put a hand on my chest, pushed me back, and motioned for silence. We retraced a few steps and slipped into an unlocked equipment room. The room was cramped, the smell of grease and old cleaning fluid thick in the air. Metal shelves lined the walls, stacked with tools, buckets, and rolls of cable. I leaned against the door, breathing slow. "This isn't just a riot. You've seen it, right?" Mike nodded. "It's the same look, same way they move, like the bad villages." He didn't need to say more. I remembered. Afghanistan. The way infected livestock stumbled before collapsing. The way a fever burned through a place in hours. This was faster, meaner. We grabbed what we could use. I took a heavy wrench. Mike found a crowbar. Not much, but better than nothing. From the hall came the thud of footsteps. Fast, uneven. Something slammed into the door, hard enough to rattle it on its hinges. A wet moan seeped through the crack. We waited, holding our breath, until the steps faded. "Upper levels," Mike said. "We get higher. Maybe we find a clearer path out." We moved fast but careful, taking another stairwell up toward the VIP lounges. On the 3rd floor, the noise of the main crowd was muffled, but the chaos hadn't spared this part. A woman in a sequined dress was slumped against the wall, one heel broken, her arm hanging at an unnatural angle. She turned her head toward us, mouth working open and shut. I raised the wrench, ready, but she just stopped. Her body slid down the wall until she sat crumpled, eyes staring at nothing. Mike didn't look back. "Keep moving." Through a set of glass doors, we entered a lounge area overlooking the pitch. Down below, the match had stopped completely. Players and referees clustered near the center circle, some pointing toward the stands, others backing away. One of the infected broke past security and onto the field. The way it ran, all jerks and lunges, it didn't care about the cameras, the crowd, nothing. It hit a linesman from the side, taking him down hard. Gasps and shouts erupted from the people still in the lounge. A man in a suit bolted for the exit, knocking over a table. That was our cue. We slipped out with the scattering group, heading for another stairwell. Somewhere above us, something heavy slammed to the floor, followed by the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. Every exit we'd tried so far was blocked, swarmed, or locked down. The safe way out was shrinking by the second, and if we didn't find it soon, we weren't making it out at all. The stairwell emptied us into the upper concourse, and for a second, it looked clear. No crowds, no screaming, just the low hum of the stadium's emergency lights and the distant roar of chaos below. Mike exhaled. Finally, The sound cut him off. A low, wet groan rolled down the hall ahead of us. Shapes moved in the shadows. 4, maybe 5 of them, swaying as if drunk. Then one lifted its head. The light caught its face. The skin around its mouth was torn, teeth slick with blood. "Contact front," Mike said, out of old habit. We tightened our grips on the wrench and crowbar. No guns, no backup, no safe retreat. Just us. The first one broke into a sprint, bare feet slapping against the tile. I stepped forward, swinging the wrench in a wide arc. The steel connected with the side of its skull. The impact jarred my arm, but it dropped instantly, dead weight hitting the floor. The others rushed in. Mike slammed his crowbar into one's jaw, snapping its head back. Another came from the side, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. Its teeth snapped inches from my face. I shoved hard, driving the wrench down into its temple. 2 more pushed through. One went for Mike, forcing him back against the wall. The other lunged at me, knocking the wrench from my hand. We went down hard, rolling across the tile. Its breath was hot and foul against my neck. I reached up, grabbed its head, and slammed it into the floor again and again until it stopped moving. My hands shook as I shoved it off. Mike wasn't doing much better. The last one had him pinned. I scrambled up, grabbed the wrench, and swung. The blow crumpled the back of its skull. Mike pushed the corpse away, panting. For a few seconds, all I could hear was our breathing. Then, the quiet broke. More groans, this time from behind us. "They're coming," Mike said. "Too many. Move." We sprinted down the concourse, boots slipping in patches of spilled soda and blood. A barricade of overturned chairs and tables blocked one end. Behind it, a small group of survivors waved frantically. "Let us through!" I shouted. They hesitated. One man, maybe late 20s, stepped forward with a makeshift spear. "You bitten?" "No," Mike barked. "Let us in!" Groans closed in from both ends of the hall. The man finally nodded and yanked a chair aside. We ducked through, helping them shove it back into place as the first infected hit the other side, clawing and slamming into the barricade. Inside the makeshift safe zone, a handful of people huddled together. 2 women, an older man, and a kid who couldn't have been older than 8. His face was pale, eyes wide. Mike knelt to catch his breath, but the kid's stare was locked on him. I followed the gaze and froze. Blood on Mike's forearm. "Mike." He glanced down, then shook his head. "Not mine. One of them grabbed me. Didn't break skin." The kid's mother didn't look convinced. She pulled him closer. The barricade shuddered again. One of the chairs splintered under the strain. A hand shot through the gap, clawing at empty air. "We can't hold this," I said. The younger man with the spear nodded grimly. "We've been trying to get to the broadcast booth. Rumor is there's a service lift there that goes straight to the ground outside." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than dying here. We tore the barricade open just enough to slip out the other side, then ran together as the infected poured into the space we'd just abandoned. Halfway to the booth, an older man in our group stumbled. He grabbed my arm. "Help me!" Behind us, the infected were gaining fast. If I slowed, they'd be on all of us. Mike's voice cut through the panic. "Dan, move!" I yanked my arm free and ran. The man's scream followed us until it was swallowed by the wet sound of teeth tearing into flesh. By the time we slammed the broadcast booth door shut, I could still hear it. Not just the scream, but the part of me that hated myself for leaving him. Mike locked the door and leaned against it. "You did what you had to do." I wanted to believe him, but I knew the cost, and it was only going to get higher. The broadcast booth felt safe for all of 10 seconds. The infected were already pounding on the door, their fists and shoulders thudding against the frame in a steady rhythm. The glass wall behind us overlooked the pitch. I could see clusters of infected roaming the field, chasing down the last of the spectators who hadn't made it out. The stadium lights cast everything in harsh white, turning the chaos into something unreal. Mike was scanning the room. "No lift controls here. This was bad intel." The young man with the spear swore under his breath. "There's a security post on the other side of the press wing. If anyone's got a lift key, it's them." The pounding on the door grew louder, wood splintering at the frame. "We move now," I said. Mike nodded. "Form up. I'll take point." We slipped out a side door into a narrow hall lined with equipment cases. The muffled groans from the other side of the walls told me we weren't alone in this section. Halfway down the hall, the first infected appeared. A tall man in a shredded Argentina jersey, his jaw working in quick, snapping motions. Mike didn't slow. The crowbar came up, smashing into the side of the man's skull with a sickening crack. We moved fast, cutting through the warren of halls toward the security post. The closer we got, the more the smell hit. Copper, sweat, and something foul underneath. The door to the post was ajar. Inside, the lights flickered over overturned chairs and the bodies of 2 security guards. One was sprawled across a desk, a sidearm still in his hand. Mike went for it immediately. He ejected the mag, full, then checked the chamber. "Clear." He tossed it to me. "You're better with a pistol." The second guard had a pump-action shotgun on the floor beside him. Mike grabbed it, racking the slide with a practiced motion. The young man's eyes widened. "Where the hell did you guys learn that?" Mike didn't answer. He just opened the door to the hall and moved out. The first group hit us before we even reached the corner. 3 of them came fast, their feet slapping the tile. I squeezed the trigger. The pistol's report deafening in the confined space. The first shot took one through the eye. The second dropped another with a chest hit that slammed it back into the wall. Mike's shotgun boomed. The third infected folding instantly. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the stench of the infected. We kept moving. At the next junction, a mass of them surged toward us from both ends. No way to outrun them. "Left side!" Mike barked. We pressed against the wall, letting the first wave funnel in tight before opening fire. The shotgun tore through them, the blasts echoing like thunder. I put round after round into heads, the recoil hammering my arm. Still, more came. The young man fought with his spear, jabbing into an infected's throat before it could reach one of the women. She swung a broken chair leg like a club, desperation in every strike. One lunged for me, too close for the pistol. I shoved it back into the wall, then drove my elbow into its face. Bone crunched. Mike's shotgun roared beside me, taking its head clean off. When the last one dropped, the hall was a mess of bodies and steaming gun barrels. We didn't stop. Every second here was another second for the sound to draw more in. The service lift was just ahead, the heavy steel doors a welcome sight. But as we approached, the panel's red light told us what I'd feared. Locked. Mike cursed under his breath. "Keycard." One of the women pointed to a side door. "Security chief's office. He might have it." We pushed in. The office was dark, papers scattered across the floor. Behind the desk, the chief himself slumped in his chair. His uniform was torn at the neck, dried blood streaking his chest. I stepped closer. His eyes snapped open. He lunged, knocking me into the wall. The pistol clattered away. His teeth scraped against my shoulder, only barely missing skin. I shoved hard, but his weight pinned me. Mike didn't hesitate. The shotgun blast at point-blank range painted the wall red. I staggered back, chest heaving. The keycard was still clipped to the chief's belt. I ripped it free and we ran for the lift. It took precious seconds for the doors to open. Behind us, the groans were building again. Shapes were already spilling into the far end of the hall. "Inside!" Mike barked. We piled in. The young man jabbed the ground button again and again until the lift finally groaned to life. As the doors slid shut, one of the infected slammed into the gap, arms clawing. I stepped forward, pressed the pistol to its forehead, and pulled the trigger. The body dropped, and the doors sealed with a metallic thud. The lift began its slow descent. Mike glanced at me. "This isn't over." I nodded, gripping the pistol tight. "No, it's just getting started." We stepped out of the stadium's underground parking into a city that no longer belonged to the living. The night air hit me, thick with smoke, gasoline, and something metallic that clung to the back of my throat. The sound was worse. Screams echoed between skyscrapers, broken by the crack of gunfire in the distance and the guttural moans of the infected. "Stay sharp," I said, keeping my pistol at the low ready. Mike swept his shotgun left and right, scanning the shadows. The street ahead looked like a war zone. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of the road, doors hanging open, some still with headlights cutting through the haze. A bus lay on its side, windows shattered, a smear of blood trailing down the length of its frame. We moved between vehicles, using them as cover, watching for movement. Halfway down the block, we saw them, a cluster of maybe a dozen infected, tearing into something in the middle of the street. The sound of their feeding turned my stomach, wet and tearing, like meat being ripped from bone. We skirted wide around them, staying in the shadows. For a moment, I thought we might get by unnoticed. Then one of them, a tall man with a shredded referee jersey, lifted his head, blood dripping from his mouth. His eyes locked on us. "Move!" I shouted. The group turned as one, breaking into a sprint. Their feet pounded the asphalt, arms flailing, jaws snapping. Mike fired first, the boom of his shotgun echoing off the buildings. One dropped instantly, but the rest kept coming. I put 2 rounds into the chest of the lead infected before planting one in its head. It tumbled forward, skidding across the pavement. We fell back toward an alley, firing as we went. The noise drew more of them. Shapes spilled out of a side street. 4, 5, maybe more. We ducked into the alley, but it wasn't the safe haven I hoped for. A body lunged from behind a dumpster, catching Mike off guard. I slammed the pistol's grip into its skull, feeling the jolt travel up my arm as it collapsed. Mike pumped a shell into the next one that tried to squeeze through the gap. "Keep moving," I barked, and we sprinted through the alley. We burst out into a side street lined with shops and restaurants. The glass fronts were shattered, and flickering neon signs buzzed above looted interiors. In one shop, I saw movement, not infected. A man waved at us from behind an overturned table. We rushed inside, weapons up. He wasn't alone. 3 other people huddled behind makeshift barricades. They had weapons too. Handguns, a couple of hunting rifles, all scavenged. "Ammo?" I asked. The man nodded, tossing me a half-empty box of 9mm rounds. Mike got a few shells for his shotgun. "You're not gonna last here," I told them. "This street's going to be crawling in minutes." One of the women shook her head. "We can't move. My brother's hurt. Can't walk." I looked at Mike. We both knew what that meant. Leaving them here felt like a death sentence, but staying with them was suicide. "Board up. Stay quiet," I said finally. "Don't draw attention. If you hear shooting, it's us." We left them there and pressed on, heading toward a main road where we might find an evacuation route. The deeper we went, the worse it got. Fires burned in trash bins. Cars were piled in a blockade at the far end, smeared with bloody handprints. The infected moved in small packs now, darting between vehicles, hunting. The air was alive with the sound of them. Groans, snarls, the shuffle of feet. "We're close to the river," Mike said, pointing ahead. "If we make it there, maybe we can find a boat." I nodded, but my gut told me the worst was yet to come. We were in the open now, no more hiding in shadows. Every step forward felt like a dare to the dead, a gamble with our lives. Somewhere in the night, a distant explosion lit the skyline, and for a moment, the streets fell silent. Then the moans came back, louder, closer, and from all directions. We kept walking. We had no choice. The road to the river felt like it stretched for miles. My legs burned, and every muscle screamed to stop, but stopping meant dying. The dead were behind us, their voices echoing through the streets like a chorus of hunger. Somewhere ahead, the river cut through the city, and if we were lucky, there would be a boat, any boat, to take us away. We moved fast, hugging the sides of buildings to avoid open sightlines. Fires burned on rooftops, casting warped shadows that danced across cracked pavement. Mike was breathing hard, shotgun gripped tight, eyes darting between alleys. We turned a corner and froze. The street leading to the river was blocked by overturned buses and mangled cars. A makeshift barricade probably set up by the military in the early hours of the outbreak. It might have worked back then. Now, it was just a trap. The infected were everywhere, crawling over the vehicles, tearing into corpses, smashing their bodies against barricades in a blind frenzy. "They're between us and the river," Mike said. I scanned the street. There was no sneaking through, no way to skirt around without getting trapped. "We push through," I said. Mike gave me a look that said he thought I'd lost my mind. "That's suicide." "It's already suicide if we stay here," I said. We checked our ammo. I had 4 magazines, partly full. Mike had maybe a dozen shells, not enough for the numbers we were facing. Still, it was either now or never. We opened fire, the sound of our guns cutting through the night like a starter pistol for hell itself. Heads burst, bodies dropped, but for every infected that fell, 3 more surged forward. We advanced in bursts. Fire, move, reload, keeping close enough to cover each other. My pistol jammed after a quick burst of shots, and I cursed, working the slide until it cleared. One infected broke through, sprinting straight for me. I barely got the pistol up before its hands reached for my face. The shot tore its head back, but the momentum carried its body into me. We went down hard. I rolled, shoving it off, and another came from the left. Mike's shotgun roared, and its chest exploded in a spray of dark gore. He hauled me up. "Move!" We reached the barricade and scrambled up the twisted metal, kicking at grabbing hands. One nearly caught my boot, but I stomped down on its skull until it let go. We dropped to the other side and kept moving, but the noise had drawn more. The road sloped down toward the riverfront. That's when I saw it. A small fishing boat, tied to a dock, rocking gently in the current. Salvation. But between us and that boat were at least 30 infected, all drawn by the noise of the fight. They turned as one when they saw us, and the street came alive with snarls. We didn't have enough ammo for all of them. We both knew it. "On my signal," I said. Mike gave a tight nod. I lobbed the last of my grenades, scavenged earlier from a wrecked Humvee, into the center of the street. The explosion ripped through the air, lighting up the night. Bodies flew, limbs torn away, and for a few seconds, the path was clear. We sprinted. My lungs felt like they were on fire. A few infected stumbled into our path, but adrenaline kept us moving. I smashed one aside with the pistol grip, and Mike blew another off its feet with his shotgun. We hit the dock and leapt onto the boat. It rocked dangerously as we landed. I shoved Mike toward the controls. "Get it started!" He dropped the shotgun, fumbling with the ignition. I turned, firing into the horde now pouring down the dock. They were close. Too close. My last magazine was almost dry. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. Mike slammed the throttle forward, and the boat lurched away from the dock just as the first infected reached the edge. They fell into the water after us, arms thrashing, jaws snapping. I kept firing until the last round clicked empty, then tossed the pistol aside. The current carried us away, the city lights shrinking behind us. But the river wasn't silent. Shapes moved in the water. Bodies, maybe alive, maybe dead, carried by the current. A low groan drifted over the sound of the engine, and I realized some of them were swimming. Mike pushed the boat harder, the bow cutting through black water. "We make it to the far bank. We keep going," he said. "No stops." The city faded into the darkness behind us, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't escaped. We'd just traded one kind of danger for another. The river stretched on, black and endless, and every shadow looked like it might reach up and drag us under. Still, we were alive. For now. And in this new world, that was the only victory that mattered. The hum of the boat's motor was the only thing breaking the stillness of the river. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles pale under the dim moonlight. Mike sat beside me, shotgun across his lap, eyes fixed on the dark bank slipping past. Neither of us spoke at first. After the night we'd just lived through, words felt too small to contain it. The city's skyline faded behind us, its jagged outlines silhouetted against a faint orange glow, still burning on the horizon. Somewhere back there, the screaming had stopped. That silence was worse than the noise. It meant there was no one left to cry out. Mike finally broke it. "We're still alive. That's something." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if alive was the right word anymore. We were breathing, hearts still beating, but whatever part of us used to belong to the world before, that had been left behind in the streets. We followed the river's winding path, the engine a low, steady growl under our feet. Every splash against the hull made me twitch. I kept imagining shapes moving in the water, hands breaking the surface, pale faces bobbing just out of sight. Irrational, maybe. But after tonight, nothing felt impossible. An hour passed before we spotted the faint outline of a small dock ahead. It wasn't much, just rotting wood and a shack barely standing. But it was the first sign of shelter we'd seen. I eased the boat in, cutting the motor. The sudden quiet pressed in like a weight. We tied off and stepped onto the dock, both of us moving slow, listening. No moans, no footsteps, just the river lapping at the pilings. The shack's door was open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Inside, it smelled of dust and mildew, but it was empty. We found a couple of old fishing nets, a cracked lantern, and a few cans of food so expired the labels had faded. It wasn't much, but after the night we'd had, it felt like treasure. Mike dropped into a corner, shotgun resting against his shoulder. "We'll rest a bit, figure out where this river leads in the morning." I leaned against the doorway, staring out over the dark water. Somewhere, miles away, a single gunshot echoed, carried on the wind. It was a lonely sound, and it reminded me we weren't the only ones left. But whether that was good or bad, I didn't know yet. The air was cool, the night too still. My eyes wandered to the tree line across the river, where the moonlight caught on something. At first, I thought it was just branches swaying. Then I saw it. A figure, motionless, watching us. Too far to make out the face, but tall, broad-shouldered. I blinked, and it was gone. For a long time, I kept staring at that spot, waiting for it to move again. But the trees stayed still. Mike was already snoring lightly in the corner. I shut the shack's door, bolting it with a piece of old timber, but the image stayed burned into my mind. We'd escaped the city, sure, but the feeling in my gut told me the worst was still out there, following the river, waiting for the right moment to step into the light.